The station lights hummed softly as hundreds of alien delegates gathered in the Great Hall. Everyone's attention was fixed on the center stage, where the announcement of the Deathworld Trial was about to begin. Banners from 100 worlds hung above, glowing in colors that few human eyes could even name. The trial was more than just a contest. It was the ultimate test of survival, strength, and cunning. Every century, the Galactic Council chose candidates from across the stars to prove which species deserved honor and power. Among the crowd, one figure stood almost unnoticed, a human small and quiet, his dark hair messy, his uniform plain. He sat at the edge of the chamber like a shadow. No one called his name. No one spoke to him. His presence was more like an accident than a choice. Aliens laughed in whispers, their voices sharp like broken glass. "Why is a human here?" one hissed. "They are fragile bones, snap so easily," said another. A third chuckled, "Let him go first into the fire he will make." The beast's less hungry. He lowered his head, pretending not to hear, though every word cut into him. He had lived his whole life like this, overlooked, ignored, not chosen for anything important in the galactic fleets. He was background noise while other humans pushed forward to be leaders, soldiers, or explorers. He was the one forgotten. Then the hall silenced as the council speaker, a tall, silver-skinned being with eyes like molten stars, stepped forward. The voice echoed across the chamber. "Candidates, chosen by fate itself, the Deathworld Trial begins, and only the worthy will survive." Holograms lit up the hall, each chosen fighter displayed with their species name beside them. Warriors strong enough to crush metal beasts with claws longer than arms, champions from the most dangerous worlds of the galaxy. When his image flickered onto the screen, the chamber erupted in laughter. A human asked one delegate in disbelief, weak and slow, "Why waste a slot?" Another alien mocked, "I did not know they. Let prey join the hunters." He clenched his fists, but stayed silent. He had learned long ago silence was safer than speaking. Still inside him, something stirred, not anger, but something colder. Determination. The council speaker ignored the mockery and raised one long hand. "The Deathworld Trial is not only strength, it is survival, cunning, adaptation, and endurance. Let the galaxy remember that." But no one believed it, at least not when their eyes fell on him. After the assembly, the chosen were led to their quarters deep within the station. Each alien suite was fitted for their needs. Atmosphere-tailored weapons provided nutrition balanced for their physiology. The human was given a bare room with a cot, a simple pack of gear, and a basic blader. Tall reptilian warrior sneered when passing his door. "Pity you will not need even that," he said with a grin. "Your death will be quick alone." He sat on the cot, staring at the pack. Inside were rations, a canteen, the blade, and nothing else he touched. The blade's edge testing its sharpness. It was ordinary plain, but to him it was real in his hand. It felt steady across the galaxy. Billions tuned into the broadcasts. Every home, every station, every ship. The Deathworld Trial was entertainment too. Many sacred ritual to others, but to him it was survival. The quiet human that nobody noticed would soon stand on a planet known to devour even the strongest. The night before departure, he could not sleep. He thought of Earth, of the small town where he had grown up, forgotten by teachers, ignored by peers, always chosen, last always passed over. He remembered walking alone while others celebrated victories that were never his. But he also remembered small things, patience, waiting, fishing in silence. Until the line pulled, endurance, climbing hills with no one to encourage him, learning to work quietly without reward. He realized the council speaker was right. Strength was not everything. Survival was not about being the loudest or the strongest. It was about lasting longer than anyone else. When the morning came, the chosen gathered in the docking bay. A massive transport ship loomed before them, its hull scarred from countless missions. The alien warriors swaggered, boasting about their kills, their skills, their superiority. He stood alone at the edge, listening without reply. Some glanced at him with pity, others with mockery, no one with respect as they boarded the ship. He found his seat in the far corner, strapped in as the engines roared. To life, the view outside showed the stars sliding past one by one toward the system that held the Deathworld. The planet had no name, only a number and a warning symbol. Storms, constant predators, relentless poisonous air rivers that boiled with strange life few who had visited had ever returned alive. Inside the ship tension rose, each warrior sharpening weapons, chanting battle hymns, or meditating with glowing crystals. He sat quietly, closing his eyes, steadying his breath. An alien leaned across the aisle, staring at him with cold amusement. "You will not last 1 hour. Human, maybe," he thought. "Maybe I will not last 1 hour, but maybe I will last longer than you." The ship descended, fire streaking the sky as the atmosphere clawed at the hull. The noise shook every bone as the pilot shouted, "Prepare for entry, candidates, ready yourselves. The trial begins now." The hatch opened, a blast of heat and dust struck the cabin. The world outside was chaos, sky filled with burning clouds, ground covered with twisted forests and jagged stone. Alien beasts roared in the distance. The air tasted of metal and ash. The warriors leapt out, weapons raised, armor shining. Some screamed battle cries, others charged forward, but he paused, standing at the edge of the ramp, feeling the world press against him. His heart pounded, but he did not move with haste. He stepped down slowly, one foot after another, eyes scanning the land, listening to the sounds, the way the wind carried the cries of predators, the way the ground shifted under his boots, every sense open alert behind him. The hatch sealed the ship, rising back into the sky, leaving them alone, abandoned until the trial ended one way or another. The aliens rushed into the forest, cutting, slashing, claiming territory, their voices echoing in challenge, but he turned the other way toward the rocks where shadows stretched long, and the noise of others faded. He was alone again, just as always. Yet in the silence he felt something he had never felt before, not shame, not despair, but freedom. No one expected anything from him. They all thought he would die quickly. No one watched closely. No one guarded against him. He realized for the first time in his life being invisible might be his greatest weapon. The wind howled, carrying the stench of beasts. He crouched low, placing his hand against the soil. It was damp, vibrating faintly with movement. Something large was near his breath, slowed his grip, tightened on the blade out there in the distance. One of the alien champions shouted, then screamed, cut short by a sound like bones breaking. He closed his eyes, listening to the silence that followed. He whispered softly to himself, 1 hour, I will last longer than 1 hour. The Deathworld Trial had begun, and though the galaxy laughed, though every alien expected his death, he took his first step into the wild, not as prey, but as a survivor, and deep inside the planet itself seemed to notice him. The shadows bent, the wind shifted, predators paused. Something unseen and ancient recognized the small human who had been overlooked for so long. The invisible human was no longer invisible. Not here, not on the Deathworld, where every second was a fight for life, and every breath was borrowed time. The sky burned red as the ship lifted away, leaving behind only smoke and the heavy silence of the Deathworld. The ground trembled beneath their boots, as if the planet itself rejected their presence. Jagged trees twisted upward like black claws, their branches dripping with acidic dew that hissed when it touched the soil. The air was thick, hard to breathe. Every breath felt sharp like broken glass, cutting into lungs. The alien warriors spread out quickly, weapons drawn, armor gleaming their voices. Loud with confidence, one massive reptilian fighter pounded his chest and roared into the sky, daring the world to face him. His companions laughed, the sound echoing through the dead forest. Like broken bells, he stood at the edge, watching quietly. His small pack slung across his shoulder, his simple blade hanging by his side. He did not rush forward like the others. He had learned long ago that loudness was weakness, patience was strength, so he crouched low, touching the strange soil between. His fingers, it was damp alive with crawling things, tiny creatures with glowing jaws that snapped at his skin. He pulled back quickly, wiping his hand on his sleeve. The forest shifted. Something moved among the shadows. The predators of the Deathworld were already watching. The alien champions were too loud, too careless. They thought themselves hunters, but they were prey. The first strike came swift from above. A beast like a giant mantis dropped from the canopy, its claws sharper than steel. One alien screamed as he was torn in half, blood spraying across the ground. The others fired plasma bolts, filling the forest with light. The beast screeched, but it did not fall. Another came, then another. The forest came alive with monsters drawn by the noise. The human stayed low, hiding behind a jagged rock. His heart hammered, but his eyes stayed sharp. He watched the way the creatures moved, quick but predictable, their legs tapping in rhythm, their claws rising before the strike. He saw patterns. Where others saw chaos, aliens fired wildly, wasting ammunition. Their roars of fear mixed with anger. They fought with power. But no thought blades clashed against claws. Screams filled the air. One reptilian warrior swung too slow, and his head rolled. Across the soil, another tried to flee, but the beasts leapt faster. The human gripped his blade steady. He did not run into the fight. He did not scream or shoot. He waited, listening, watching, when one of the mantis beasts turned its head away from the chaos, searching for another target. He crept forward, silent. As shadow, he stepped lightly, each move careful, his breath steady. Then with one sudden strike, he drove his blade deep under the joint of its leg where armor thinned. The beast screeched, thrashing wildly, but the blade had found its mark. The human ducked under its flailing limbs, pulling the weapon free as green blood sprayed across his arm. The creature collapsed, shuddering before it fell still. For a heartbeat, silence broke through the chaos. An alien soldier turned and stared, eyes wide. The human had killed what their heavy weapons had failed to drop. Another alien, watching from a distance, blinked, disbelief flickering across his face. But there was no time to react. Another wave of predators poured from the shadows, their eyes glowing, their bodies moving with terrifying speed. The aliens regrouped, roaring once more, charging into the fight. Their pride would not let them retreat, even though the planet was devouring them. He backed away, dragging the beast's carcass with him, using it as cover. The other predators circled, but paused, confused by the scent of their fallen kin. He stayed low, hidden within the stench. Letting them pass, his mind raced. Survival was not about killing every beast. It was about living through the storm. Battle raged for hours. Plasma bolts shattered trees. Fire spread through the undergrowth. Screams cut short one by one. By the time the forest quieted again, the ground was littered with corpses, both alien and predator. The air stank of blood smoke and acid. He emerged slowly from his hiding place, eyes scanning the horizon. Only a handful of aliens remained, their armor torn, their weapons almost drained. They looked around in disbelief, once boasting champions, now weary survivors none spoke of. The human's kill, none gave him credit. Instead, they glared as if angry that he had lived. He did not care. Their hatred was better than their laughter. He gathered what little he could from the dead ration packs, blades, bits of cloth, anything useful. He moved quick, knowing the forest would not stay quiet for long. As night fell, the planet grew darker than any night he had known. The sky burned with storms, lightning crackling across black clouds. The ground shook with distant roars. The aliens tried to form a camp, but their fire drew more predators. Soon the screams began again. He did not stay with them. He found a hollow beneath a fallen tree, covering the entrance with broken branches. He lit. No fire. He made no sound. He sat in the dark, with only the sound of his breath, the air heavy with the smell of decay around him. Far above, in orbit, billions watched the trial through their screens. Alien commentators mocked the human's weakness, but some replayed the image of him striking down. The beast whispers spread through the networks. Some wondered if there was more to humanity than fragility in the darkness of the death world. He closed his eyes not to sleep, but to listen. He counted every sound, every shift in the wind, every crack of distant branches. The planet was alive. It hated intruders, but it also revealed its secrets to those who listened. Hours passed. Slowly, predators prowled nearby, their growls vibrating through the ground. But they did not find him hidden under his cover. He waited silent, patient. When dawn came, the forest shimmered with toxic mist glowing faint green. The remaining aliens stumbled through, coughing, their armor corroding, their voices hoarse. He stayed low, letting the mist pass before moving, each breath careful, each step chosen. He thought of Earth again, of long nights when no one spoke to him, of days when others laughed while he stood alone. Those years had felt like punishment, but here on the death world he realized they had been training. Silence, patience, invisibility. These were weapons stronger than plasma or claws. The forest opened ahead into a valley filled with twisted rivers, boiling with strange fumes. Alien bones scattered across the banks, proof of those who had failed before. He crouched low, studying the paths, deciding carefully where to move. A scream echoed behind him. Another alien had fallen. He did not look back. He did not slow. He only whispered to himself, one day at a time, one step at a time, survive. The Deathworld Trial was only beginning, and though the galaxy mocked, the aliens sneered, the invisible human had already lasted longer than anyone believed he would, and the planet itself seemed to watch him with interest, as if testing not just his body, but his spirit, as if waiting to see how far one overlooked man could go. The sun on the death world was no comfort. It was a burning eye glaring down at the survivors, as if daring them to move. The sky shimmered with heat waves, the air thick with the stench of blood from the battle the night before. Half the chosen were already gone, their bodies broken, their names erased. The galaxy watched from orbit in silence, wondering who would be next. The human woke from a shallow rest hidden in the hollow of twisted roots, his body sore, his throat dry. He had not slept much, only listened to the night the predators had prowled close. He had heard their claws scraping, their breathing heavy, but his hiding place had held. He pulled himself out, slowly, eyes scanning the trees, every sense sharp. The forest seemed quieter than before, but quiet did not mean safe on this world. Quiet meant something worse was waiting. Not far away, the remaining aliens gathered around what was left of their supplies, their voices low and bitter. They argued about territory, food, and leadership. The reptilian champion who had mocked the human before shouted loudest, claiming he was still the strongest, despite the bloodstains on his torn armor. His followers nodded. Though fear flickered in their eyes, the human did not join them. He stayed at a distance, moving carefully along the edge of the valley, watching the ground for tracks. Strange claw marks scarred the soil, deep grooves that suggested something heavy, something fast. His instincts whispered. Danger was close. The forest smelled wrong, as if death lingered just out of sight. Then it came without warning. The ground shook. A shadow leapt from the branches above a predator, faster than sight claws gleaming. Like black steel, it struck one of the reptilian warriors, slicing him apart in a single blow. The others screamed, firing plasma bolts wildly. The forest lit up with flashes of green fire. The beast shrieked, its body armored, its eyes burning like molten gold. It did not fall. Instead, it slashed through another alien, tearing him in half. Panic spread through the survivors. Some tried to flee, others stood their ground, but their fear made them clumsy. The human crouched low behind a boulder, watching, his breath steady, his heart racing. He studied the creature, its movements fast but not random. Its attacks came in bursts, quick, then slower to recover. He saw it tilt its head before each strike. Its claws raised a heartbeat before lunging. The aliens did not notice, blinded by terror, but he saw the rhythm. The reptilian champion roared, charging forward, swinging a massive blade. He struck the beast across the chest. Sparks flew. The creature staggered, then roared in fury, knocking him aside like a toy. Its claws tore through his armor, spilling blood across the soil. The champion fell, gasping, the arrogance gone from his eyes. The human tightened his grip on his simple blade. No plasma, no armor, only steel and instinct. He moved silently around the edge of the fight, while the beast was distracted by the larger prey. He crouched low, stepping lightly until he was behind it, close enough to see the cracks in its armor, beneath the shoulder joint. He waited, breathing slow, his muscles tense. Then when it lunged again at another alien, he struck. His blade drove deep into the joint, sliding past bone, into the heart of the creature. The beast screamed, thrashing wildly, its claws tearing into the air, but he ducked beneath them, rolling away. As the creature staggered, green blood spraying across the ground, it turned its burning eyes toward him, hatred and confusion mixing in its shriek. It stepped once, then collapsed, the ground shaking as its body fell still. Silence filled the clearing, broken only by the hiss of blood soaking into the soil. The surviving aliens stared at the human, their eyes wide, some filled with shock, others with anger. He had done what their weapons could not. With nothing but patience, timing, and a simple blade, the reptilian champion, still alive but bleeding, dragged himself up on one arm, his gaze burning with rage. He spat blood and snarled weak prey. He tricked it with luck, not strength, but his voice trembled, the words hollow. The others said nothing, though. He was their leader. Their eyes kept drifting to the human. The human pulled his blade free, wiping it clean on the grass, his expression calm inside his chest. His heart pounded, but he did not show it. He did not boast. He did not speak. He only looked, once at the others, then turned away, walking toward the deeper forest, his silence louder than any roar far above commentators replayed. The moment the human strike shone again and again across the galaxy. Voices argued, some still mocked, claiming it was a fluke. Others whispered, perhaps humans were not as weak as believed. Perhaps there was more to them than fragility. Whispers spread faster than light, traveling across networks, into homes, into ships across 1,000 worlds. On the ground, the survivors followed at a distance. They did not want to admit it, but fear had shifted. Fear was no longer only of the Deathworld. It was of the silent human who moved like shadow, whose eyes saw what they did not. The forest thickened, roots twisting into walls, branches weaving overhead, blotting out the burning sun shadows spread cool but heavy. The human slowed, crouching low, studying the marks on the soil. He found trails, broken plants, signs of more predators. The others walked carelessly, stepping on branches, snapping them loud enough to echo through the woods. He hissed softly under his breath, not at them, but at the foolishness of noise. Then he froze, ears sharp. Something was moving nearby. He raised his hand, a silent signal. Though he did not know if they would understand, most ignored him, laughing bitterly until the sound came, claws scraping bark, heavy breathing closing in. Their laughter stopped too late. The predators struck, this time smaller, but faster creatures poured from the undergrowth like shadows with teeth, their bodies sleek, their jaws wide, glowing saliva dripping from sharp fangs. They swarmed the group, clawing, biting, tearing. The aliens screamed, firing in panic blasts of plasma, lighting the dark. But for each beast that fell, two more leapt from the shadows. The human did not fire. He moved quick to the side, finding high ground on a fallen tree. From there he could see the way the pack moved, circling, driving their prey into a chaos. He gripped his blade tight, waiting as one beast leapt at him. He ducked low, slicing upward through its neck. The body fell twitching at his feet. Another came. He rolled aside, stabbing into its side, green blood spraying across the bark below. The reptilian champion fought, but his wounds slowed him. One beast dragged him down. He roared, thrashing before his cries cut short. Another alien ran, only to be pulled, screaming into the shadows. The survivors dwindled fast. The human knew he could. Not kill them all, not with steel, not with numbers against him, but he did not need to. He looked at the pack leader, larger eyes burning brighter. It circled behind the others, commanding them with shrieks. He steadied his breath, timed the moment. Then, leapt from the tree, landing hard behind it before it could turn. He drove his blade deep into its spine, twisting with all his strength. The beast screamed, thrashing, but the others froze their rhythm, broken, their leader collapsing with a final shudder. It fell silent. The pack scattered, melting back into the forest, leaving the ground littered with bodies both alien and beast. The survivors gasped, trembling, covered in blood and smoke. They looked again at the human standing over the fallen leader. Blade dripping, his eyes calm. They said nothing, none dared mock now, but their silence was heavy, filled with fear and something else, respect. They did not want to admit, but could not deny. The human looked at them, then at the forest around. He did not smile, he did not boast. He simply cleaned his blade again, slid it into its sheath, and walked deeper into the death world, leaving the others to follow, if they chose his steps, steady, his eyes sharp, each movement quiet, deliberate, for the first time. Since the trial began, the galaxy watching did not laugh. They leaned forward in silence, curious, anxious, a question spreading across millions of voices. How far could this overlooked human go? How long could he survive in a place built to kill everything that walked upon it? The death world whispered its answer through the wind. Survival was not about power or pride. It was about patience, cunning, silence, and the will to endure. And the human who had been invisible all his life was showing the universe. That invisibility could become the sharpest weapon of all. The nights on the death world were worse than the days the sun brought fire and storms. But the dark brought whispers and screams. When the sky turned black, the forest came alive with eyes. Glowing in every shadow, predators moved with silent steps, their growls rumbling like thunder. The survivors huddled together around a fire, their weapons shaking in their hands. The flames licked upward, but the light only made the darkness seem deeper. The human did not sit with them. He stayed farther away, hidden in the roots of a massive tree. His fire was no fire at all, only warmth stolen from the earth below. He had dug into the soil, covering himself with branches and leaves. He watched. From the shadows, eyes sharp, listening to every sound, the others thought the flames kept them safe. But the fire was a beacon. It called to every predator that roamed the night screams. Echoed soon after the first wave came small creatures with long teeth and glassy skin. They darted from the shadows too fast for plasma fire to track their bodies, almost invisible in the flickering light. They struck hard, ripping into flesh. The aliens shouted weapons, firing wildly. The fire exploded in sparks. The forest rang with panic. The human did not move. He pressed low against the roots, letting the chaos pass by above him, his breath steady, his eyes fixed on the movements. He could see what the others could not. The creatures were not attacking blindly. They were pushing, forcing the aliens toward the cliffs. At the edge of the valley, one alien screamed as he slipped over the edge, his body vanishing into the dark below. Another tried to pull him back, but was dragged down with him. The rest panicked. Their formation broken, they stumbled over each other, fighting both the beasts and their own fear. The human crawled forward silently, using the chaos to move unseen. He stabbed one of the glass-skinned creatures through the side, its body writhing. Before collapsing, his blade pulled free quickly. Before the others noticed, he dragged the corpse into his hiding place, covering himself with its scent. The pack circled him, but passed by their noses, confused by the smell of their own kin-be-dawn. Only a handful of survivors remained. They sat around the burned remains of their camp, their eyes wide and hollow. None spoke of the night. Their pride shattered their voices. Broken, the reptilian champion was gone. His arrogance ended by the fall. Into the abyss, what remained was a scattered group of warriors who no longer trusted their weapons or their strength. The human emerged quietly from the shadows, his face calm, though his eyes were heavy from sleepless hours. He carried nothing new. No trophies, no boasts, only silence. Yet the others looked at him with something different now. It was not laughter, not even anger. It was a question unspoken. How had he survived when so many stronger had not? He did not answer. He walked past them. Crouching at the edge of the forest, studying the tracks in the soil, deep claw marks dragged across the ground, larger than any beast they had seen before. He touched the dirt, feeling the tremor beneath it. Something massive had moved during the night, something waiting. The aliens argued again. Some wanted to build stronger defenses, some wanted to move fast away from the valley. None wanted to follow him. Yet they watched as he walked without hesitation into the thicker woods, their fear greater. Than their pride they followed, at a distance afraid to be near him, but more afraid to be left behind. The forest grew darker. Branches twisted so tight that the sunlight barely touched the floor vines, dripped with acid sap that hissed when it landed. On stone, the air grew heavier, every breath a struggle. The aliens coughed, armor corroding slowly from the mist. He covered his mouth with cloth dampened with water from his canteen, filtering the air. His steps light, careful. He showed no sign of struggle. After hours of marching, the group stumbled upon a clearing. At its center stood the remains of an old camp, bones scattered across the ground, armor, rusted weapons broken. It was clear others had tried before them and failed. The aliens froze, their faces pale, but the human knelt among the bones, searching quietly. He found a shard of metal sharp enough to cut. He tied it to his pack without a word. Survival was in every scrap, every piece of forgotten past. The ground trembled suddenly. Roar split the air louder than thunder. The trees shook as something massive pushed through the shadows. A creature taller than the trees itself, its body armored with black scales, its mouth wide enough to swallow them whole. The survivors panicked, firing everything they had. Plasma bolts striking across its hide, but the creature hardly flinched, swiping one massive claw through the clearing, tearing two aliens apart in a single blow. The human did not join the chaos. He ran low to the ground, circling the edge of the clearing, studying the way the beast moved, its eyes small, its head turning slow compared to its body. He saw the weakness while others only saw death. It was strong, yes, but its size made it slower, less precise. It depended on fear to scatter prey. He shouted for the first time, his voice sharp and sudden. The aliens turned in shock at the sound. They had never heard him call before. He pointed toward the rocks on the far side, the higher ground. If they ran there together, the beast would struggle to climb. Some hesitated, but the roar of the monster convinced them. They followed. Scrambling toward the rocks, the creature swung its tail, smashing trees into dust, but missed them by inches. The human reached the rocks first. Pulling himself up with quick movements, he turned, grabbing one alien's arm, hauling him upward. Before the beast could strike, plasma bolts fired again from above, striking the softer flesh beneath its jaw. The creature roared, staggering but still, not falling. The human pulled free the shard of metal, tying it to his blade. He climbed higher, then leapt down, aiming for the joint between its armored plates. The blade drove deep. The beast screamed, twisting, throwing him hard to the ground, but the damage was done. Blood poured from the wound. It staggered, finally retreating back into the forest, its roars shaking the ground until it vanished into the distance. The aliens gasped, staring at the human lying on the rocks, his arm bleeding from the fall, his chest heaving from the effort, yet alive. He stood slowly, gripping his blade once more. His eyes calm as always. The others looked at him differently now. No one laughed, no one mocked, but none spoke either. Their silence heavier than words. Night came again, storms rolling through the sky, lightning splitting the clouds. The survivors built no fire. They huddled in silence, watching the human work quietly. Gathering branches not for flames, but for traps, he tied them together with vines, setting them along the ground, shaping spikes from bone. The others stared as if seeing him for the first time. They had thought him weak, useless. But now They saw the truth. He was not the loudest. He was not the strongest, but he was still alive because he listened where they shouted. He adapted where they resisted. He endured where they broke. Far above the galaxy, watched in silence, networks filled with arguments. Some still called it luck. Others began to whisper a word that spread fast across the stars, human resilience, as lightning cracked across the horizon and beasts howled into the night. The human crouched low by his traps, blade resting across his knees, his eyes never closing. The trial was not strength alone, it was patience, it was the will to last longer than anyone else, and though he had been overlooked, forgotten, mocked by all, he was still here, he was still standing, and the death world itself seemed to be testing him, watching him, waiting for his next move. The dawn came with fire in the sky, clouds rolled heavy with red light as if the heavens themselves bled. The survivors stirred slowly, their faces pale, their bodies weak. None spoke. Of the night before, none wanted to remember the screams, the shadows and the sound of claws, scraping too close to the edge of their fragile camp. The human rose first, his movements quiet, steady, his blade at his side. He checked the traps he had laid. During the night, some had caught small beasts, twisted creatures with long tails and sharp teeth. He skinned them quickly with careful hands, his face calm, his motions practiced, while the others looked on with disgust. They turned away their pride, refusing to eat such things, but when hunger clawed at them, their eyes returned, watching as he roasted the meat slowly over a smokeless ember fire. One by one they came closer, saying nothing, taking pieces from his hand, their silence an unspoken admission that his way kept them alive. The ground trembled, then a sound deeper than thunder echoed across the valley. Birds, with wings like blades, scattered into the sky. The survivors froze, every muscle tense. The human crouched low, one hand pressed. To the soil he felt it, the vibration heavy, powerful, steady, like the steps of a giant. From the far end of the valley, trees snapped like twigs. A shadow, larger than anything they had seen, moved forward, a beast beyond imagination, its body covered in black scales thick as stone, its head shaped like a hammer, its eyes burning like molten fire. Each step shook the ground, dust rising with every impact. The aliens gasped, fear etched into their faces. Some raised their weapons, firing in panic plasma. Bolts struck the scales, exploding in flashes of light, but the beast did not slow it. Roared a sound so loud the air itself seemed to shatter. Birds fell from the sky. Stunned by the noise, the survivors clutched their ears, screaming in pain. The monster charged its massive claw, sweeping across the ground, smashing two aliens into the rocks, their bodies crushed to nothing in an instant. The human did not move with the panic. He ran toward the cliffs, his eyes scanning every detail. He saw the way the creature moved, its head swung low before each strike, its eyes small, its underbelly softer than its back. He knew brute force would not kill it, not plasma, not blades, only cunning, only patience. The others fired again, screaming battle cries, but their blasts were wild, scattered. The monster ignored them, trampling one beneath its foot. The ground split as if the world itself cracked. The human climbed higher onto the rocks, his mind racing. He remembered the rivers boiling with strange fumes, remembered the way smaller beasts had avoided them. Perhaps even this giant feared the boiling water. She shouted down his voice, sharp, commanding, louder than he had ever spoken before, toward the river. Lead it toward the river. Some hesitated, but the roar of the monster left no choice. They scattered, running in the direction he pointed, firing behind them to draw its attention. The beast followed its steps like earthquakes, its jaws snapping, its breath hot enough to scorch the ground. The chase tore through the forest trees, splintering the survivors, stumbling through roots and vines. More fell, their screams cut short by the swipe of claws or the crush of massive feet, but some made it to the edge of the river. The water bubbled with steam. strange gas rising from its surface. The human stood there waiting, blade in hand, eyes sharp. The monster stopped for the first time, hesitating at the riverbank, its massive head swinging side to side as if sensing danger. The aliens shouted, firing again to force it forward, but the creature roared, refusing to step into the fumes. Instead, it swung its tail, smashing one survivor against the rocks. Blood spraying across the stones, the human saw the hesitation. He saw the weakness, not in its body, but in its mind. It feared the river. He shouted again, louder, draw it closer, then scatter. He leapt forward, throwing stones into the water. The steam rose higher. The beast's eyes fixed on him, rage burning. It charged, head down, teeth bared its steps. Shaking the earth, the human ran along the river's edge, his body light, his breath steady. The beast followed, crashing forward, blinded by fury. Its claws tore the soil inches behind him, but he did not stop. He ran toward a narrow outcrop of rock that jutted over the boiling stream. His heart pounded, his legs burned, but his mind was clear when he reached the end. He turned sharply, leaping aside at the last moment. The beast lunged past him, too heavy to stop. Its body slammed onto the outcrop, stone cracking under its weight with a roar. It toppled forward, plunging into the river. The water exploded, steam rising in a cloud so thick the survivors covered their faces. The sound of the monster thrashing filled the air, boiling water, hissing. Against its scales it screamed louder than thunder, shaking the valley. But the fumes burned its lungs, its movements slowed, its roars turned to gurgles, until at last the water swallowed it whole, leaving only bubbles rising from the surface. Silence, followed, broken only by the hiss of the river. The survivors stood frozen, their weapons lowered, their mouths open in disbelief. They looked at the human standing on the rocks, his chest heaving, his blade still in hand. His eyes, calm though sweat, dripped down his face. He had done what none of them could. He had turned the world itself into a weapon. He had killed the apex predator, not with strength but with cunning, with patience, with the will to see what others could not. When Alien stepped forward, his voice shaking, "You are not weak." His words, almost a whisper. Another nodded reluctantly. Their eyes filled not with mockery now, but with respect, fear, and something deeper. Hope, the human, said nothing. He wiped his blade clean on the rocks, then slid it back into its sheath. He turned, walking away from the river into the deeper forest, his steps steady, his silence heavy. The others followed at a distance, no longer mocking, no longer doubting. They followed because they had no choice. Because without him, they would already be dead. Far above the galaxy, erupted in noise networks, filled with voices, some outraged, others in awe. The broadcast replayed the moment again and again, the small human standing calm as the beast fell into. The river word spread faster than light, humanity, cunning, resilient survival. The galaxy had watched the invisible man become visible, and it could not look away. Night came once more. The survivors built no fire. They sat in silence, staring at the human as he worked, shaping new traps with bone and vine, his movements steady, deliberate, their pride broken, their faith shaken. They knew now the truth. They had laughed at him, ignored him, despised him. But the Deathworld had chosen differently. The Deathworld had revealed what they could not see, and as the storms rolled in across the sky and the earth trembled with distant roars, the human sat in silence, blade across his knees, his eyes unblinking. The trial was far from over, but already the Deathworld itself seemed to bend around him, as if testing him, not to destroy him, but to see just how far one overlooked man could endure. The storms had not ended for 3 days. Black clouds swirled above the forest. Lightning split the sky in jagged lines. Thunder shook the ground. The rain burned like acid, leaving scars on stone and soil. The survivors huddled under broken cliffs, their bodies weak, their eyes hollow. The death world gave no rest, no safety, only more trials each day harder than the last. The human moved among them silently, his blade strapped across his back, his steps careful, steady, while others crouched in fear. He worked, gathering branches that did not rot under the rainstones, that did not dissolve in the acid he built. Small shelters for cover, shaping them with patience, while the others only watched at first. They mocked him quietly, still holding on to scraps of pride, yet when the rain grew heavier and their skin blistered, they crawled under the shelters he had built. They never thanked him, but they stayed alive because of him. Above the galaxy, watched every second, every moment, broadcast across millions of screens. The commentators spoke with strange tones, no longer mocking, not fully respectful, but uncertain. Some called him lucky, others called him clever, but many began to whisper something more dangerous. They called him leader. The survivors did not want to admit it, but their eyes followed him now, even when they looked away in shame. Even when they hated the thought of obeying a human, they moved when he moved. They ate when he handed them food. They slept only when he kept watch, his silence heavier than orders. But not all accepted him. Some carried jealousy like poison. One alien, a tall insectoid warrior with armor hard as stone, glared at the human whenever. He passed, his eyes sharp with hatred. He had been a champion of his people, a chosen warrior. Yet he had done nothing in the trial but survive in the shadow of the human. His pride would not allow it. His whispers spread through the group, small words, doubts, fears. They said, he will betray us, he will leave us to die, he will claim victory for himself. The human heard the whispers. Though no one spoke them to his face, he said nothing, his eyes only sharper, his patience deeper. On the fourth night, when the storms broke and the sky turned clear, stars shining cold above, the insectoid warrior made his move. He waited until the others slept, until even the predator's cries grew faint. Then he crept toward the human blade, raised ready to strike. But the human was not asleep. His eyes opened the moment the blade shifted. His hand moved faster than the assassin expected. Steel rang against steel, sparks flashing in the dark. The survivors woke to the sound of the struggle. The two clashed in silence, their blades cutting the air. The insectoid strong, fast, but reckless, the human calm, patient, his movements small, precise. Their fight drew the eyes of the survivors, fear and awe mixing as they saw the truth. The insectoid roared with rage, swinging. The human ducked low, slicing across his leg. He staggered, falling to one knee. The human pressed the blade to his throat. Silence filled the camp. The others waited for blood, but the human stepped back, lowering his weapon, his voice quiet, but sharp enough to cut through the night. Enough, he said the word, simple, final. The insectoid froze, his pride, broken, his rage hollow. He stared at the human, then lowered his head in defeat. No one challenged again. From that night, respect shifted, not by choice, but by force. Even those who hated him followed his movements more carefully. They realized he could end them as easily as he saved them. They realized silence did not mean weakness. It meant control. Days passed. The trial grew harsher. Food. Scarce, predators stronger, the group smaller each morning, fewer faces. Yet those who remained grew harder, their eyes sharper under his guidance. They learned to move quieter, to waste nothing, to fight only when needed. The human showed them how to set traps with bone and vine, how to hide their scent from hunters, how to listen to the rhythm of the forest. Some resisted, but when his methods saved them again and again, they obeyed even if they never admitted it. Whispers spread beyond the camp. Far above in orbit, the galaxy watched in silence. Debates filled the networks. Should a human, a creature once mocked as fragile, be allowed to stand among champions? Commentators argued, leaders of worlds spoke of fear or hope, and across countless homes voices rose: humanity, resilience, cunning, survival. The words repeated again and again, but the death world was not finished one night. As the group moved through a canyon deep and narrow, The ground trembled. The cliffs shook, stones falling like rain. The human froze, hand raised for silence. The air carried a sound, low, deep, almost like a drum. Then from the shadows emerged a pack of predators, larger than any before, their bodies black as night, their eyes glowing red. They moved as one, circling. With perfect rhythm, the aliens panicked, their weapons raised, but the human's hand shot up again. "No," he whispered. They did not understand until the beasts roared, shaking the canyon walls, then charged not at the human, not at the group, but past them, chasing something greater, deeper into the dark. The ground split open, the canyon walls shaking. A new sound rose, a roar, unlike any they had heard before. Not beast, not storm, but the world itself tearing apart. The survivors clutched the stone, screaming as the floor cracked wide. Molten fire, glowing beneath the human, grabbed one alien, hauling him upward before the ground fell away. His strength surprising all, he shouted, "Climb," his voice sharp. Commanding, they obeyed without question, scrambling up the jagged walls as the earth split below. When they reached the top, breathless, trembling, they looked down into the canyon. The beasts gone, swallowed by fire. The world below, glowing red like the heart of a furnace. They turned to the human. There, eyes wide, none dared speak, but in their silence they admitted the truth. He had seen it first, he had saved them again. Jealousy did not vanish, but it was weaker than fear, weaker than respect. Even the insectoid warrior kept his distance, his head lowered when the human passed. The galaxy above erupted with voices louder than before. They called him the Deathworld human. They called him survivor champion, even leader. The human did not smile. He did not boast. He only walked forward, his steps steady, his eyes sharper than ever. He knew the trial was not finished. The death world would test them again and again, until only one remained that night. As the survivors slept around a small hidden camp, the human sat alone, watching the stars, his blade resting across his knees, his mind calm. He thought of Earth, of the years when no one saw him, when his own kind passed him by. He thought of the laughter of aliens when his name was called to join the trial. He thought of silence, of shadows, of waiting, and he realized that everything had led here, every overlooked moment, every forgotten step had become his weapon. He was no longer invisible. The galaxy had seen him, the survivors had followed him, the death world itself had tested him, and still he stood. He whispered softly to himself, not for others to hear, only for the night to carry one more day, one more breath. I will endure. And deep within the forest, as if the world listened, the ground trembled again. The predators roared, the air burned heavy. The death world was not finished. It waited for the final test, and it would show no mercy. The final dawn came with silence, no storms, no roars, no screams of predators. The sky was clear, the sun sharp, the air heavy. The survivors woke. Slowly, their bodies thin, their eyes hollow. They had lost count of days. They no longer remembered how many had died along the way, only that the number was greater than the living. The human stood apart from them as always, his blade across his back, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He felt it before the others did. The air was too still, the forest too quiet. The death world was watching, waiting for the last trial. They moved together across the broken land, following him without question. They did not argue anymore. They did not mock his silence or his methods. They followed because they knew only he could keep them alive. They crossed rivers that boiled with fumes, climbed cliffs that shook with hidden beasts. They walked through plains of ash where nothing lived. The human led them without pause. His face calm, though his body ached, though hunger gnawed at him. He endured because endurance was all he had ever known. At midday, the ground trembled again, but not like before. This was not the step of a beast, not the crack of stone. It was steady, rhythmic like a drum echoing from the distance. The survivors froze, their eyes wide, fear rising again. The human raised his hand for silence. He listened. The rhythm grew louder, closer, the Ground shook with each beat. Then from the horizon they appeared, machines tall as mountains, walking on legs of steel, their bodies shaped like hunters, their eyes burning red. The last trial had begun. Not nature, not beast, but the hand of the galaxy itself. The overseers had sent their guardians, machines built to test strength, cunning, and will. The survivors panicked. Some fired wildly, their blasts sparking uselessly against the steel legs. The machines did not slow. They marched forward with endless patience, weapons glowing on their arms. The human shouted, "Move!" his voice sharp. They scattered into the rocks following him. He knew they could not fight these things head-on. He knew brute force was death. Only the world itself could be turned into a weapon again. He led them into the canyons. The machines followed their steps like thunder-shaking stone from the cliffs. The survivors stumbled. One was crushed by falling rock, another vaporized by a beam of light. But still they ran the human, guiding them deeper into the narrow paths where the machines could not move as freely. He climbed swiftly, pulling others up when they faltered. His hands cut his breath sharp, but he never stopped. The canyon split into 3 paths. The survivors hesitated, their fear tearing them apart. The human looked once, then pointed to the left without words. They obeyed. He took the center path alone. His steps steady, his eyes sharp. He knew the machines would follow him. They always followed the strongest. The others shouted after him, but his figure vanished into the shadows of the canyon. The machines turned as if they too knew the truth, ignoring the survivors, focusing only on him, their weapons glowing, their steps shaking the world. The chase lasted for hours. The human running through jagged stone, the machines behind him beams, carving fire into the cliff's dust, choking the air. He moved with precision, ducking, leaping, climbing each second. Death a breath away, he found the river again, the boiling stream that had swallowed the great beast. Days before, he paused only a heartbeat, his eyes scanning the cliffs. Then he moved, climbing higher and higher until he reached the outcrop where the world cracked into molten fire below. The machines followed their heavy bodies, crushing stone there. Weapons burning the air, the human stood at the edge, the river of fire glowing beneath him, his blade in his hand. He did not speak. He did not shout. He only waited. The first machine stepped closer, its weight shaking the cliff stones, breaking under. Its feet, the second, came behind, weapons glowing, ready to strike. The human leapt forward, not away, but onto the machine, his blade slicing across glowing wires, sparks flashing. He climbed higher, avoiding beams that burned the air. He reached its head, his blade driving deep into the glowing eyelight, shattered. The machine screamed a sound like tearing metal. Then it fell, its body crashing into the fire below. The second machine roared, its weapons blazing. The human leapt from the falling giant, landing hard on the rocks. His body bruised, blood on his hands, but his eyes still sharp. The second machine charged, its steps heavy, the cliff breaking more with each impact. The human ran along the edge, drawing it closer. The stone cracked the ground. Falling away, piece by piece, he leapt across a narrow gap, landing on a thin ledge. The machine followed its weight, too much. The stone gave way with a thunderous crack. The machine toppled forward, arms flailing, before crashing into the molten river. Flames swallowed it, metal screaming until silence. The survivors watched from far above their eyes, wide, their bodies frozen. They saw him standing on the edge, his chest heaving, his blade glowing with sparks. They saw 2 giants destroyed by his hands. And they knew the trial was ending, but the Deathworld was not finished. One last tremor shook the ground. The sky split open. A ship descended, vast and silent, its hull black as night. It hovered above the canyon, beams of light shining down. A voice filled the air, deep and cold. The trial is complete, only one may remain. The survivors froze, horror in their eyes. They looked at each other, then at the human. They understood what it meant. The trial had never been about teams, never about groups. It had always been a test to find one champion, only one. Fear turned to desperation. Weapons raised, trembling hands. They turned not on the world, but on him, their faces twisted by survival instinct. They shouted, "Forgive me, forgive us." Then fired. The human moved faster than thought, his blade flashing sparks, filling the canyon. He cut down the first, then the second, his body moving with a calmness that chilled the rest. They came at him screaming rage and fear, but he did not falter each strike. Precise, each step steady, until the canyon was silent again, and only he stood, blood on his blade, his chest rising and falling slow. The ship descended lower, a beam of light wrapping around him, lifting him into the air. The canyon, the river, the bodies, all fell away beneath him. He rose into the sky silent, his face calm, his eyes unblinking. The survivors gone, the machines destroyed, only him. The galaxy erupted with noise, millions watching in disbelief. The overlooked human, the forgotten one, the man they had mocked, ignored, dismissed. He had endured the death world, and he had won not with strength alone, not with weapons, but with patience, cunning, and will. They broadcast his name across the stars. They called him champion, survivor, leader. Some called him monster, others called him savior, but all spoke his name. The invisible man who became the center of the galaxy. He stood within the ship. Now, its halls silent, its walls black, light glowing around him. The voice spoke again. "You have passed the trial. You are Deathworld proven. You are chosen." He did not answer, his eyes only sharp, his silence heavier than any words. He had nothing to prove, nothing to ask. He had already endured more than they could ever understand. The ship carried him higher into the stars, leaving the broken world behind. Across the galaxy, eyes watched, whispers spreading. The human was no longer invisible. He was no longer overlooked. He was Deathworld's champion, and nothing would ever erase that truth. And in the silence of the stars, as the ship drifted through endless night, the human closed his eyes for the first time. In countless days, he allowed himself a single breath of peace, not victory, not triumph, only survival, because survival was enough. Because in survival he had become more than anyone had ever believed, and the galaxy would never forget him.